So you're all very welcome here today. So I've been in contact with a lot of you already. So my name is Claire Halpin. I work in the Centre for Transformative Learning here in the University of Limerick. And we are responsible for running AICUR, which is the All-Ireland Conference of Undergraduate Research. So first of all, well done on everyone for registering for AICUR, and we're very much looking forward to the 29th. Whether you're presenting live or you're sending in a recording or you're going to host a poster on our webpage, we are delighted to have you join AICUR 2022. So again, just a reminder that this is being recorded for those who are not present today or couldn't attend the workshop, or for anyone who wants to look back. But in saying that, we will stop at the end for a Q&A, so I'll stop the recording. I'll stop the recording before we get to the Q&A, and that way you'll be able to pop off your mics and come on and ask any questions that you might have. For anyone who's wondering where the recording can be found, we're going to host it on the AICUR webpage, but I'll send out an email to all the registered participants for AICUR, directing them to the recording of this presentation as well. So in this preparatory session today, we'll address the different options. You've already chosen your options, but to run through, I suppose, different tips for the different options to showcase your research at AICUR 2022. A few general points to consider when preparing your conference, whether it's a presentation, performance, or a poster. I'm going to introduce you to the concept of a student panel, and I'll be looking for expressions of interest for any of those of you who would like to be on that student panel on the day. Using Microsoft Teams on the day itself, we'll just take a run through on that. And to that point, we will run another practice session on the 25th where you can pop on and practice sharing your screen, running through your presentation. So that will help you as well with the use of Microsoft Teams on the day if you want to avail of that service. And as I said, we'll have time for a Q&A at the end as well. So you will already have selected one of the 5 options for showcasing your research at AICUR 2022. So this year, the 5 options that we gave were a 10-minute live presentation on the 29th, a 10-minute recorded presentation which will be hosted on the webpage, a 10-minute live performance, again performed on the 29th, or a recorded performance hosted on the webpage, and then you have your poster submission, which will be hosted on the AICUR webpage also. So at this stage, you've already selected it, and you're hopefully in the process of kind of putting together either your presentation, your performance, or your poster. So I'm going to run through some tips on the presentation first, and really whether it's live or recorded, the same tips will apply for your presentation. So many students use slides to guide their audience through their presentation, so that's fine. Some of you may not be using slides, you might be doing something more innovative or whatever the case may be, but many of you will just use PowerPoint slides, okay? It's down to your preference, but again, just to say that it's not compulsory to use slides. What is necessary on the day is that you will have to have your camera on, and you will have to have good audio. So just make sure that you check your audio in advance, you check that your camera is working, you've got good Wi-Fi, good coverage wherever you are, so that you know you can have your camera on and your audio will work without any interruptions on the day itself. Again, just a reminder, there will be an opportunity to practice on March 25th, and I'll remind you of that again at the end. Presentations will be recorded and hosted on the AICUR webpage after the conference. This was already on the abstract submission form that you sent in to us, just highlighting that the presentations would be recorded on the day. So if you do not wish to have your presentation hosted on the AICUR webpage, then you would need to email us in advance just to let us know. So some general points to consider when preparing your presentation. So always think of your time allocation. So you have 10 minutes to present. So try and make sure that you pace yourself from the start, from the get-go, and that means practicing it a few times to make sure that you can say everything you need to say within that 10-minute time frame. consider what your key message is, okay? So you may not get to say everything that you want to say about your research. So pick out the key points that you really want to get across to your audience and make sure that you have captured them within your presentation. Your audience, consider if it's specialist or non-specialist. Okay, so bear in mind we have a lot of attendees on the day that are maybe attending their family members, their friends, or their members of academic staff in the different universities that we have represented at AICUR this year. Not everyone that you're presenting to will be a specialist in your subject area. So you're the specialist, you're going to be informing them what your research is about, but please keep in mind that we will have a lot of non-specialist attendees on the day. So with that in mind, you need to make your research as accessible as possible to all attendees on the day. So take time to explain concepts, to explain abbreviations, if you're using any acronyms or abbreviations, that you take time to kind of spell them out at the start so that everyone is kind of on the same page when it comes to understanding your research. Back to timing again. So your time allocation is 10 minutes, and then again, consider how you are timing that. So don't start off very slow and then end up trying to cram everything in at the end. So again, it comes down to practice. So practice your timing and avoid rushing. Your layout. So less is more. So make sure that your font is easy to read and limit animations. Okay, so you don't want to have kind of lots of pictures or lots of text flying in and all these different animations. It can be very distracting for the audience, and it can even be distracting for you. And again, it can kind of involve a lot of kind of clicking through slides on the day, which you want to avoid. You don't want to be clicking through animations constantly. You want to make it as simple, as straightforward as possible for both you and your audience. So always remember, less is more. Structuring your presentation. So always take time to introduce yourself and the title of your presentation or your study. Outline your presentation. So what I mean here is to give an overview of what you will cover. So just a brief synopsis at the start of what your presentation is going to run through. And then when you get into the sort of the body of your presentation, you want to deliver the content in a clear and logical format. You want to clearly outline your research questions, your methodology and your findings. And in some cases, you will have got that feedback already when you receive feedback on your abstract. So just make sure that you kind of separate out under different headings all the different aspects that you want to cover on the day. You also want to ensure that you give a really clear conclusion. You want to remind the listener of your key findings, and you also want to reflect, I suppose, on what impact your research has had. And you also want to consider maybe what you would do if you had more time. So this is undergraduate research. So obviously your time is limited and you're trying to balance it with the rest of your college course. So what would you do if you had more time? What were the limitations of your study? Because obviously you're just looking at one small subsection of whatever the area you're researching is. So I suppose if you had more time, what else would you consider, and therefore what are the limitations that kind of limited your research within your own study? And again, maybe mention some future recommendations. So based on the results that you find, what would you recommend would be the future research in this area? And then kind of leave with an impact. So sum everything up, make sure that it's really clear to the audience why your research is important and what impact it has had. And then if you have any references, again, just make sure that you're incorporating your references. So just, I suppose, to recap, very important to make sure you kind of have a beginning, a middle and an end. And the beginning, again, is what we spoke about in terms of introduction, setting the scene, giving an outline of your presentation. The middle is going through your research questions, your methodology, your findings and results. And then at the end, you want to summarize and conclude all of your findings and I suppose go through any take-home messages, any recommendations, etc., etc. You want to really clearly signpost your research to your audience. So again, put in headings, make sure the audience is really clear about what you're discussing at the time you're discussing it, okay? So make sure if you're moving from one section to the next, so if you're moving from your methodology to your findings, really clearly state that now I'm going to move on to my findings, have your slides titled in a really clear manner, and just really take your audience with you throughout your presentation. Summary, conclusion and recommendations. So I've already mentioned it, but again, a clear summary, clear conclusions and future recommendations. And again, don't be afraid to say about those limitations, because again, no matter what level of research you're conducting, there's always going to be limitations to your research. So don't be afraid to point out if there were limitations, and maybe they can be incorporated into future recommendations. On the day itself, and again, this can be, I suppose this is true for whether you're presenting live or whether you're recording your presentation, be confident, okay? This is your work. You're the subject matter expert here, so be confident in your own work and let that come across when you're recording your presentation. Avoid reading from the slides that you have. So your slides will just be bullet points, they'll just be pointers to remind you to speak around whatever point you have on the slide, okay? So have your point there, but make sure that you speak around it and that you introduce other aspects rather than just what's written in front of you on the slide, and try to avoid reading from your slides. Engage with your audience as best you can. So I know it's an online format, and in some cases, if it's a recorded presentation, you're not really aware of your audience being there. It's going to go up on the webpage and people will watch it back afterwards. But imagine that you have an audience in front of you and try to engage with your audience. Remember, try to keep in mind that your audience will not all be from the same subject matter area or same discipline that your research is from. So remember to, I suppose, make your research accessible to non-specialist audience members as well. Deliver your content in a slow and clear manner. So again, that comes back to timing, managing your time and pacing yourself from the outset. Avoid large chunks of text on your slide. So again, this is the point that less is more, and just have the minimum points there and speak around them. Going to move on to performance. So anyone who is either performing live or a recorded performance. So just to bear in mind, if you are performing live on the day, then you will need to have the necessary equipment and technology available to present your research on the day. Again, just a reminder that if you are going to be performing, this will also be recorded and hosted on the AICUR webpage as per the consent on the abstract submission form. But if for any reason you do not want that hosted on the AICUR webpage, then we would need you to email us at ctl@ul.ie to inform us of that. And then finally, our posters. So many of you have chosen to submit a poster, which we will host on the website. And so we just want to look at what makes a good poster. So important information should be readable from about 10 feet away. So I know these posters are going to be hosted online, but you may use this poster in other research settings. So it's always best to imagine that there are going to be people walking up to that poster and reading it. So it is important that your information is readable from about 10 feet away. Make sure that your title is short and draws interest. So don't have anything too long that's going to take too much time to read. You want your audience to be drawn in and captured from the outset. Your word count should be kept between 300 and 800 words approximately. And again, you want to make sure that the text is clear and that your message is really to the point. So things that I would recommend for posters are the use of bullets, numbering, and different headlines and subheadings just to make it easier to read, and again to signpost your research to the audience or to the reader. Effective use of graphics, colours and font. Again, don't overdo it. Always think that sometimes less is more. A nice simple layout can be just as effective, but appropriate use of graphics, colour and fonts can be really effective also. A consistent and clean layout, and you need to also include acknowledgements, your name and your institutional affiliations, okay? So others you have worked with on your project, and represent the institution that you're presenting on behalf of as well. And I suppose it can be quite daunting when you sit down to write a poster to try and think, where do you begin? So these 3 questions are quite good to consider when you begin creating your poster. So what is the most important or interesting or astounding finding from my research project? So that might be something that you can tie into the title of your poster, again, to really capture the attention of your audience or of your reader. How can I visually share my research with conference attendees? Should I use charts, graphs, photos, or images? So again, that's kind of a reminder that sometimes the go-to in our head is text, but you can convey like so many words in one simple image or graph or a chart, and that will allow you to take a lot of text out of your poster. So really consider how you can visually display your research on your posters. And again, that goes for presentations as well. So a lot of what I'm saying for presentations is applicable to posters or performances, and vice versa. What I'm saying about posters is applicable to your presentations as well. And then finally, ask yourself, what kind of information can I convey during my talk that will complement my poster? So again, many of you won't be doing a talk with your poster, but I suppose it's to get into the mindset that normally this may not be in an online setting and you may actually be speaking around your poster. And I suppose what that is hopefully going to remind you of is that you do not need to include every little bit of detail on your research on your poster, because in normal circumstances you'll be talking around your poster as well. And by all means, if anyone does want to record any audio to go with your poster, you are more than welcome to do that as well, if that's something that you're interested in. So just go through a final check, just running through a couple of things to remember. So remember to put your name and the title of your presentation on your title slide or on your poster. And again, if you're doing your poster, you're mentioning your college or your university as well. Always do a spell check and a grammar check before you submit or before you finalize your poster or your presentation. Your timing. So again, it comes back to practicing. So practice out loud, practice for a friend, practice for a family member, practice as a group. If some people are presenting as a group, do not leave it until the day to figure out who's going to go first, who's going to go second. Make sure that your handovers are seamless if you're presenting in a group. Make sure that you have practiced well in advance and that you know exactly what you're going to do on the day. Get feedback from others, and again, a reminder of that practice session on March 25th. If anyone wants to pop in, we'll have an open call from 11 to 3, which I'll again brief you about in more detail towards the end of this call, but you are more than welcome to come on and practice your presentation. Avoid reading from the screen, avoid excessive animations, keep text minimal, you fill in your story. So again, have your little bullet points there, but be able to speak around the bullet points to show how well you know your research area. Anticipate questions and prepare. So there may be some questions asked at the end of your presentation. And again, don't worry about these because you are the expert in your area. So you will know the question or the answer to any questions which are asked, but maybe just think about some questions that may be asked. And then any references. So any references, any external sources that you're using, just make sure that they are referenced. Then what I want to bring your attention to next is something I mentioned at the start of this workshop, which is our student panel discussion. So on the day itself, we are proposing that we run a panel discussion which will be formed by you, the students who are participating in AICUR. So this can be in addition to a live presentation that you might be doing as well. So basically, we just want to know, would you like to discuss your research as part of a student panel? Would you like to discuss the importance of research in higher education? And other things that we might discuss are current trends in research at the moment and where research is going. We're inviting any students who are interested in having a live discussion on March 29th about all things research. You will have a chance to prepare in advance and to practice answering some questions. So we will do something like this, a workshop where we will prepare any students who are willing to participate in the panel discussion. We'll run through a series of questions that will be asked on the day, and we'll prepare you as best as we can for the panel discussion, which will take place on March 29th. So it's a really good opportunity to just, I suppose, be the voice of student research, to kind of put yourself forward to discuss research from the student's perspective. And again, it's a great platform to be seen to be discussing research, because we'll have lots of guests from other universities there on the day itself. So it will be a really, really good opportunity for students to be part of this panel if you are interested. And if you are interested, I'm going to ask you to fill out an MS Forms, which I'm going to email out to you after this workshop, and that's just seeking an expression of interest from anyone who would like to take part on the day. Then going to come to the second part of this workshop, which is using MS Teams on the day. And again, I don't want you to get bogged down in this, because we will be sending out more information on this closer to the day itself, where we will kind of inform you the running of events, the program of events for the day, how they will run, different breakout rooms that you will be part of, the time you are presenting, etc., etc. At the moment, we're still finalising just the finer details on that, but we will be in a position to send all that out to you next week. And at that point, we can kind of send some additional information on MS Teams as well. And again, a reminder that we're inviting you with that opportunity to present or practice presenting your research on March 25th. So as I say, excuse me, don't get bogged down in it, but I'll just run through a couple of things. So some of it will be applicable to students inside UL, but also applicable for non-UL students. Just a reminder that a schedule and links will be provided in advance of March 29th. So don't worry if some of this is referencing UL students. Obviously, we know we have students presenting from a whole host of different universities, different institutions around Ireland, and links and information will be provided to you well in advance of March 29th. So what I would advise is that on the day itself, you use a laptop or a desktop for full functionality. So you can join from your phone, but presenting from your phone is always that little bit harder. There is some links to information provided on this, but I would strongly recommend using a laptop or a desktop if you can at all. You can download the MS Teams app and log in using your UL details if you are a UL student. Otherwise, we'll be sending links out to you on how to log in on the day. An MS Teams site has been created for the conference. And to find this, you can search for an MS Teams site in MS Teams. So it's called the All Ireland Conference for Undergraduate Research, AICUR. And you can search for that and ask to join our team site in advance of the day itself. Just a little snippet, that's what it looks like. Our little AICUR logo that you see down in the bottom left-hand corner also is the logo for the team site. And you'll be able to access the general channels. We don't have them populated fully at this point. We'll also be populating out breakout rooms. We'll be doing all this in the next week once we finalise the programme of events for the day. A link to the breakout rooms will be hosted on the AICUR webpage also. And that's part of the CTL website, so that would have been in previous communications, such as the advert for AICUR 2022. You had links to your AICUR webpage there, so it might be a good idea just to save the webpage into your favourites, just so you can access it more easily over the next couple of weeks. And then we will have links to the conference itself and to all the different breakout rooms hosted on the web page as well on the day. So anyone externally joining, family or friends, can log in via the links on the web page. To join the MS breakout room, so you'll be told what breakout room you need to join, and you'll be joining whichever breakout room is applicable to you. Make sure again that your camera is on the day. You can use a filter for your background if you wish, so that option comes up when you join the meeting itself. You have the option to add a filter to your background. When you're presenting, obviously make sure that your microphone is turned on, that you're not on mute, and just in the breakout rooms, you're just clicking Meet Now. You're selecting all the different options to turn on your camera, to add a filter, to keep your audio on if needs be, and then just clicking Join Now. Then sharing your presentation online on the day itself. So by now, I am sure that you all know how to join breakout rooms, how to join MS Teams conference calls, how to share your screen. But just to recap, it is just selecting the little arrow in the top right-hand corner of your screen. And then you're just going to select your presentation, which you should have open on your device. And then you'll be able to start sharing once you select your presentation. Just a few pointers as well. This will be up online, but there are links. If you're a UL student, you can find information on UL Top Desk. And if you're external, if you're a non-UL student, there's obviously the Microsoft support for MS Teams also. So if you want any other additional information, you can look either of those up. But as I say, we'll have a chance to practice on March 25th. And I'll be sending out more information by way of different breakout rooms and how to access them next week as well, along with the full event listing for the programme of events on the day itself and times that you will be presenting at, etc. So finally, just to recap, the open call on March 25th will run from 11 AM to 3 PM. So just an opportunity to practice your presentation, to practice sharing your screen, and I will send an invite to all participants again, should you wish to attend. And you can drop in at any time between 11 AM and 3 PM. So whatever time will suit you, I'll be online, and that's absolutely fine just to drop in on the day. And again, a reminder that I will send information on this workshop out afterwards, and I will send the link to the MS Teams form also for your expression of interest in forming that student panel. I'm going to give you a chance in a moment for a Q&A. I'll just introduce the slide first and then I'll stop the recording. But just by way of introduction, just a reminder, you can ask questions today or at any time. You can contact myself or Rose with any queries that you might have. So Rose, you can contact Rosaline Archibald at ul.ie or Claire Halpin at ul.ie, and you can also contact our CTL at ul.ie inbox just to address more generic queries. And again, a reminder that we have our web page for AICUR, and we'll be populating and updating that every day as the days go on next week, just adding information there. But like I say, if you have any questions, you can ask us.